100 people logged in at a time, working from home, and some teams are solely relying on IT like Microsoft Teams to coordinate. It's in some respects been one of the best times to be working here. There's positive change being implemented really quickly compared to previous times, and the impact of the work we're doing to vulnerable residents and all our residents is more widely felt than ever before. I hope this continues to happen in the future when everything gets back to normal. On our business intelligence team, we had to rapidly reorganize ourselves to support the council's response to the pandemic. Although we were all working remotely due to lockdown, there was a lot more collaboration between business intelligence and other service areas. And out of necessity, we were much more involved in the decision-making process. We had regular input into what data was available and needed, which paid heavily to the customer voice and insight hub of Redbridge. So the great work done by multiple people across the change team proved to be really useful in monitoring changes in what the demand of our residents were and how they were changing over time. One example of this is from the creation of the COVID-19 chatbot. So by keeping a close monitor of the changes in the types of requests we were getting, we were able to act a lot faster than we had done previously to preempt some of the messages and changes that needs to happen and go out to the community. As you can see, the change, we monitored it month by month, and just being able to record it like that was a great use to a lot of service areas trying to respond to the differing requests made because of COVID-19. I'm going to hand it over to Emeran now so that he can talk a bit more about our response. Emeran?
It's that classic Teams mistake of not unmuting yourself. Afternoon all. So as Armin's just said, I think intelligence and our intelligence function across Redbridge really kind of morphed into something that became data seen as a good thing, and the insight that falls off it on a day-to-day basis in pre-COVID conditions. We turned very, very quickly into data being seen as absolutely fundamental to how we responded to COVID, and much as Armin's just said again, in a way that how we responded using insight, using that intelligence to really form our communication strategy. That a living, breathing document, as all of you who work across local government will know, was changing on a day-to-day basis in terms of needs and ensuring we're getting the right messages out to our communities, our residents, ensuring that we've got the right support services out there, was absolutely critical. I think one of the kind of key to that is really from an authority perspective, having the ability to move quickly, having a group of staff, many of whom are on the call at the moment, who are able to drop the kind of standard day-to-day, this is what we're doing, and move fairly rapidly into new areas, working through developing our well-being and shielding lists, identifying our vulnerable across the authority, work that probably would have taken 2 or 3 years under normal conditions. We were doing, and our analysts were really working, just extremely hard to pull together, and that's no different from the other authorities out there. We've heard stories from a range of different authorities where their intelligence functions have really come to the fore. Insight has been fantastic. Our Insight Hub, we've got a couple of people, Anitha and Abby Cole, on our team who work to draw the insight in from across the authority, and are doing that on a day-to-day basis to really understand, what's changing, what's coming through on Twitter, what's happening in terms of contact on our website, our telephones, our different forms of contact channels, what's coming into the authority, so that we can get those messages out to to our services, who are able to then react and spin up services to react to needs. And that's the way it's been. It's been, you know, Armand spoke about pace and moving at pace. The insight has kind of given us the ability to make those informed decisions at pace. So I think from an insight perspective, from a business intelligence perspective, it's been absolutely fantastic, and our teams have been able to really play a pivotal role throughout this. I mean, none more so than our public health lead, Shuma Chatterjee, who's just been absolutely fantastic in leading the data response and informing, you know, our gold, silver, emergency response structures with the right level of information to allow us to make those decisions that we needed to make over the course of the last 3-4 months. So I mean, as an authority, I think it kind of leads into it's well versed across local government how we've moved at pace and achieved great things. And I think, Armand, if you just move the slides forward, just as we're talking, I'm not going to talk to these slides, but it kind of gives you an idea of the scale of what we've been able to do. I mean, you know, if I just look over at the kind of business grants that we've been able to spinning up new services, identifying the right cohorts, using data to allow us to identify those individuals, and then creating channels, digital channels, to allow us to service that need has been absolutely fantastic. The manner in which our IT functions, our digital teams, our program leads, project officers, we're all working on very different things pre-COVID. We're able to come together and in a very agile way draw together and bring together these new services, in some cases overnight. I mean, our wellbeing service, I recall back in March, I think it was a Friday in March, just as the pandemic was starting, we were talking about kicking off the wellbeing service. And you think about the wellbeing service and shielding services, and you think about the complexity of trying to spin up a contact centre, identify those individuals that we need to proactively call and receive calls from, the communications, the bringing together of staff, and the digital teams in the background, those hidden heroes in the background, the IT folk in the background who are busy trying to spin up databases and systems to allow us to bring that project together and that service together in rapid time. And when I say rapid time, it took 3 or 4 days working over the weekend, as many of us did, where days have just blurred into one. 3 or 4 days to spin up a service, and we've seen that over and over again. I mean, you know, Armand touched on the COVID chatbots. We worked with our partners, Agile Datum, who offered their services, and we were able to spin up a chatbot within the space of a week, and that proved absolutely pivotal in terms of providing that level of information that we needed to get out there, and it formed part of if you just go back a slide, sorry, yeah, formed part of that coronavirus hub, which our comms team were kind of pivotal in pulling together and then maintaining. So a fantastic response. I think that leads into the final piece here, which is around our digital world. Redbridge, as an authority, we kicked off our digital program, a new program for Redbridge, reframing how we wanted to move forward around digital pre-COVID back in December, and we crafted a program as we do in local government, and we said this is what we want to achieve. I think what we've seen as a result of COVID is the ambition that once was 3 or 4 months ago has just been blown out of the water, and it's now we've got to a stage where we're having to really reframe what does digital really now mean to us and our communities in a post-COVID world. So I'm not going to get into any detail. I'm conscious of time, but there is a different world that we live in now across local government in terms of servicing our communities, engaging our communities, and digital naturally plays a key role in doing that. So We've gone out and we've reframed our priorities. There is a whole body of work that sits behind that, which we can talk about in Q&As and offline. But in terms of our principles, really thinking very hard about how we focus our energy in and around those principles that we've got there. You know, the point made at number 3, which is a focus on inclusion and digital resilience, is absolutely paramount at this point in time, especially thinking about how we react as a community post-COVID going forward over the course of the next 3, 4, 5 months and beyond. So I'll leave it there. Again, conscious of time, and we can pick up questions a little later.
That's great. Thank you so much, Emeran, and yeah, impressive work from you and your team there. Now delighted to hand over to May Leow, who is the head of the local digital collaboration at the Ministry of Local Government. I'll just bring up.
Hi everyone, I'm Leow, the head of the Local Digital Collaboration Unit at the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government. Georgina, can't see the take control option, so perhaps if I just prompt you.
Oh, here they are. So they took their time. They should be there now.
Thank you. So for those who aren't familiar with the declaration, we launched the local digital declaration on 4th of July 2018 with 44 co-publishers, and that included the LGA, lots of councils as well, and it's our 2-year anniversary this month. So the declaration is based on 5 principles and the ambition for modern internet era local digital services. So firstly, it's about our users and our residents and prioritizing their needs and making sure that services are designed based on their requirements and things that they want to do. And the next one is about fixing the plumbing. So it's actually fixing the hard, unsexy, complex problems so that we can break our dependence on the inflexible and expensive technology that doesn't join up effectively. And because local authority systems are so niche, as I'm sure a lot of you have found, that there's very little choice, real choice in the market when you're buying software and systems. And thirdly, we want to design safe, secure and useful ways of sharing information. And a lot of we've seen that as part of COVID, and how can we share information securely and safely while maintaining people's personal kind of information. And then on the fourth side of things is demonstrating leadership in creating the conditions for genuine organizational transformation to happen. And lastly, working in the open whenever we can, sharing our plans and experience and working collaboratively with other organizations and reusing good practice. So as I said, this July, we're celebrating 2 years of the local digital declaration, and in the 2 years we've managed to achieve amazing things with councils and our other signatories. So we have 220 plus signatories to date. We've actually trained over 1,100 council officers and leaders, and all of our courses are free if you're a signatory. So if you haven't signed up as a council, please do so. And we've got over 100 distinct councils that have worked on or are working on 23 funded projects from our local digital fund. So from our 2 years, I wanted to share a bit about what the declaration has enabled and what have we learned in the 2 years. So it's been actually amazing to see the movement around the declaration and local government officers coming together to share and learn from each other and be a part of a community that properly understands the challenges that individuals face in the councils on a day-to-day basis. We also help amplify the great work that councils are doing by sharing their approaches and stories. And then we also use our levers and influence to support individuals and councils so that the work that you're doing is highlighted to your senior management and externally as well. And during COVID-19, we used our role as a convener and connector to hold weekly calls during the crisis so that council officers can hear about what the central and local government plans are, as well as councils being able to kind of share their approach to COVID challenges that they're facing. And feedback from attendees was that they found it so useful to hear about what other people are doing and all the different approaches people are using to meet those challenges. Also, what we've kind of done with the declaration is put into one place what digital delivery for local services can look like. It's based on GDS's Service Standard and Technology Code of Practice, and it introduces and outlines to council teams on how you can use kind of agile service design and make it part of delivery in local services. So when I was working in Southwark, I personally used the declaration as a mechanism for driving transformation and how we built services. And it's a concrete thing that I could point to and say to senior management that that's how we're building modern internet era services and what we need to do, including understanding and meeting user needs. And then on the collaboration front, through our work with DXW, we've actually found there's 4 types of collaboration: networking, knowledge sharing, resource sharing, and delivery. And the easiest form of collaboration is networking, and moves to the hardest form of collaboration, which is about joint delivery, which is what we're kind of funding in the local digital fund, which I'll go into next. So one thing we have definitely learned is that although we know that collaboration is really hard work and requires extra time, we've shown that through our local digital fund that if we help remove some of those main barriers, for example, giving money, funding projects to incentivize collaboration, councils can and will come together to solve issues that they wouldn't be able to do on their own, or it's too expensive to do on their own. In our first round, we had 389 expressions of interest, and majority of those ideas were all sound. So this shows the amount of things that needs to be fixed, as well as the level of ambition out there in local authorities. We've also learned that the bottom-up approach of letting councils decide on what priority challenges to work on rather than central government being over-prescriptive allows for stronger, diverse partnerships. For example, on one of our funded projects on housing repairs, Southwark, Lincoln, Gravesham, and Lewisham came together to improve their housing repair service. And these councils are not like physically close together, are very different in terms of size and population makeup. But as a priority problem, it was important to them. And actually, if it weren't for that kind of matchmaking opportunity the fund provided, the councils wouldn't have come together. But they are doing so now. And because their needs are so different and their resident needs are so different, that's being looked at as part of the project. It increases the application and reuse of the solution outputs that they're developing so that other councils can actually pick up that work, reuse it, and apply it for their own local context. So it's been actually really amazing to see like what is actually possible if we remove some of those barriers to collaboration. So just wanted to kind of highlight what we've actually seen at the central level across the work local authorities have been doing on COVID. And for example, what Redbridge has presented is pretty much echoed through the sector of all the fantastic work that local authorities had to do on the coalface of responding to the crisis. So right at the kind of beginning of COVID, we hit every council website in England to get a perspective of the different approaches councils were using to help residents get help, and also for residents to register to volunteer. So what we discovered when, in terms of different approaches councils were using to get help to residents, was that the vast majority, 90% of councils advertised a dedicated phone line or a dedicated email address, and had a web form for residents that are looking for help with food, prescription, collections, and an array of other services. A small minority, only 2%, had just a dedicated phone line or email address. Well, then 8% of website provided several ways of contacting councils and offered a lot of additional information, such as links to support organizations, including food banks. And then on the volunteering side, 61% of councils advertise a dedicated phone line, email address, and a web form on their website. around 36% only had a dedicated phone line, email or email address, and only 3% of councils advertise several ways of contacting them, and often with additional information such as links to voluntary groups, including Good Sam and other charities. I just wanted to share that to show like the incredible response and the pace of response that councils actually did in response to COVID. And it's just so encouraging to see that in a matter of days, councils had web forms up, had dedicated phone lines up, and dedicated email addresses up, and that was across the board of all the websites we saw on English councils. And then from what we learned in the different approaches, we put together tips and checklists on how to improve COVID communications to residents, including like the use of banners, how to make your banners distinctive, using language that your residents understand. So I'll post the links on the chat. If you haven't heard of it, it'd be good if you can have a quick look to see whether you can pick up any of the tips. And then we also did a lot of research into how the shielding data transfer was happening between councils and central government. So our digital land team in the directorate was helping make that data transfer happen. And we've learned so much on both sides, having to stand up a shielding service in a matter of days, both for central government and local authorities. So here is an example of all the internal data sources that a council have to kind of match, and it's pretty complex. So, you know, a lot of the council BI teams have been working around the clock to gather, match, and process these data sets to kind of help identify vulnerable people and match them up to volunteers and support services. And it's very manual, it's very time intensive, and it's pretty complex. So just kind of showcases the sheer work that had to go on for councils to kind of make sure that no one fell through the cracks. And then in terms of understanding the barriers to managing and using data during the shielded and the crisis response, we sent out a survey with 16 councils responding. So I'm just going to kind of run you through the top 3 barriers, which I'm sure you all will be familiar with. So the first one is about matching data internally. So it was hard to get proper identifiers, poor quality of data sets, addresses being out of date. A lot of the times NHS number matching was really time consuming because NHS numbers was not being captured reliably, and not all data sets have NHS numbers, and that was being used as the main identifier in the shielding data that came from central government. And also the next kind of barrier was the format of data sets. So lots of the different formats that I showed you previously in the slide came from different systems. So that made matching really difficult, and formats were being changed. So it meant all the processes and matching methods had to be changed sometimes on a daily basis. And then the third top barrier was issues with unique identifiers. So again, not all data sets had unique identifiers, let alone the same identifiers. So again, a lot of council systems, some of them are property-based with property identifiers versus people-based and hence people identifiers. And figuring out how to kind of match the two is really difficult and complex. And then, in terms of, you know, what we were told by the councils in the useful ways of connecting with other authorities, a lot of it was about online forums and connecting with their peers. So if you're a council and you haven't heard of local Gov Digital Slack, it's a really active community with lots of council officers, especially in the digital and tech side of things, that ask questions, and more importantly, people answer questions. And that's been really helpful for councils to kind of learn and share on their COVID approaches. Our team also ran weekly calls during COVID to pass on updates on central government schemes like the shielding work, and also get councils to kind of present their approaches and learn and share from each other. So that's been really useful. And I mean, so encouraging to see what Emeran and Redbridge are doing. I also wanted to share some other examples of great work that we've seen. So this is Oxford City Council's public dashboard that they publish on their website to showcase what kind of help people were asking for in what areas. And you can go in as a resident, have a look to see what's going on. And also if you're a local business, look at, like, for example, responding to the need for PPE equipment. So just to kind of round up on what's happening next from our team. So on Wednesday last week, we launched a local digital COVID round challenge. So that 800K is available to local authorities to apply for, and that's to support COVID-19 recovery across local government. So please apply if you haven't done so already. And we're basing it on 3 thematic areas. And these areas came up from a workshop we held with lots of councils on the COVID recovery themes that they're working on. And we picked out the 3 themes that it seem councils are actively working on at the moment. So these are around data and reporting. And again, part of like what we're presenting today, community engagement and new working and service practices. So lastly, if you can follow us on Twitter and watch out for our anniversary launch, and we've got a whole month of activities and showcasing all the brilliant work that's happening in local authorities. So that's it from me.
That's great. Thank you so much, Mayen, and yeah, happy 2-year anniversary to the local digital declaration, and yeah, fantastic to see that great work happening across local authorities. Now delighted to hand over to Thomas Vogl, who works at the Oxford Internet Institute.
Hello, everyone. I'm just going to take a second to get my presentation uploaded. But I think that this might also be a time where we'll change gears a little. I will be presenting on research that preceded COVID-19, and so it won't necessarily be the focus of this presentation, though I think that a lot of the points that I'll be discussing really overlap with what Emeran and Mayen have already discussed.
I've stopped presenting, so hopefully are you able to share your screen now, Thomas?
Yeah, I'm just uploading now.
Right.
So I'd just like to check in to see if everyone can hear me and if this presentation is showing. I see a thumbs up, great. So good afternoon, my name is Thomas Vogl. I'm a doctoral researcher at the Oxford Internet Institute. And on the average day, I do research on the relationship between new case management systems and organizational memory and child protection services, because I'm interested in understanding how stored information from the past is brought to bear on present decisions. But that is not the topic of today's discussion. Though if you're interested, you can contact me after the fact at the email address listed at the end of the presentation. Today, I'll be presenting the results of the Data Science for Local Government project carried out by a team of researchers at the Oxford Internet Institute, myself included. The presentation will be broken into 3 parts. I'll introduce the project, go through some of the findings, including a selection of examples, and then offer some recommendations for concrete steps that you can explore to help move data science forward in your local authority. The Data Science for Local Government project was an effort to understand the current state of data science in UK local authorities. The research was funded by Google and culminated in a report that is publicly available at both the link listed on this slide as well as SSRN. In this research, we understood data science as a combination of more data, new analytical techniques, and new tools to bring data and analysis together. We carried out this work with an understanding of the key contextual factors influencing local government work, including the challenges associated with a decade of austerity, challenges related to both internal and external capacity to carry out this type of work, as well as the optimistic expectations that can exist around new disruptive technologies, and managing the gap between the promise and the reality of those technologies. The research was conducted between 2017 and 2018, which may mean that it's already out of date, but we believe that some of the lessons learned transcend the individual data science projects that we studied. The research itself involved desk research on publicly available information about data science projects, a survey which was directed to at least one individual at each of the approximately 400 local authorities across the UK, and interviews of key staff whose data science projects had been highlighted in the desk research for the survey. In all, there were more than 120 survey respondents and more than 30 interview participants from at least 68 local authorities. Survey respondents highlighted that the main application domains for data science were in welfare and social care, transportation, healthcare, and housing and planning. The types of data science that were most in use related to GIS technology and analysis of social media data, although you can see here that more than 10% of respondents also mentioned using machine learning, Internet of Things technologies, and text analysis, such as natural language processing. Some of the specific examples of data science were around predictive analytics in children's social care or inspections, artificial intelligence for use in adult social care or for resident queries, data merging to enable 360-degree views of clients or to support dashboards, personalization to offer individualized services, new forms of data from smart sensors, and spatial analysis to support segmentation and emergency response. While the most predominant data science tool was Excel, local authorities were also using SQL databases, a balance of commercial and open source tools such as Tableau and R, and to a lesser extent Python for more versatile programming. Survey respondents also mentioned barriers, including challenges attracting and retaining skilled staff, concerns around privacy and security of data, limited resources to pursue innovative data science projects, fragmented data repositories held in siloed parts of the local authority, and challenges associated with building a culture of innovation at the leadership level, as well as within the organization more generally. The next 3 slides present specific examples of data science projects. These include smart sensors, predictive analytics, and artificial intelligence. These examples illustrate the nuances of trying to make these types of projects work and the features that underlie some of the recommendations for concrete next steps. One of the local authorities from our study adopted smart sensors in their bins. These sensors allowed the authority to track how full the bins were and schedule collection times and routes accordingly. The project was led by the waste management team as an effort to improve their efficiency. They brought in data scientists to help them achieve their objectives. This service-led collaboration to address a real-world problem was successful, but it also had some unanticipated results. While it made waste collection more efficient, it also increased the amount of waste collection needed to keep up with the volume, because now the authority knew in near real time when bins were at capacity. It also provided valuable data for secondary use, such as where to locate additional bins and litter disposal behavior at particular times, such as after events. Another local authority was piloting a predictive analytics data science project to identify HMOs. This type of prediction is important where there are limited resources for inspection, and targeting the most likely residences can decrease workload and reduce the number of homes being unnecessarily inspected. The models depend on training data, which may come from a number of different sources, but this can bring the collective intelligence of all those who have collected that data to bear on each individual inspector's decision. In order for these types of predictions to be accurate and meaningful, the data quality needs to be sufficiently high, and the features and design of the model need to take local context into account. In this local authority, an early version of the predictive model was suggesting residences to the inspectors that were clearly not HMOs. This reduced their trust in the tool. A subsequent version of the model included engagement with the inspectors and incorporated their contextual knowledge in its design and in feature selection. It performed much better and achieved a higher degree of trust among the inspectors. Finally, a third example, a number of local authorities were exploring data science projects around implementing autonomous agents. These projects either took the form of chatbots on their websites or intelligent personal assistants, such as Alexa, in client homes. These types of technologies depend on natural language processing and can reduce routine work while empowering residents to carry out certain activities independently. Chatbots can provide an interactive experience and an audit trail that an interaction took place. Intelligent assistants can fill a gap between visits from professional carers, and both can make it possible to have simple interactions conducted in any language. But there are challenges associated with these types of autonomous agents. Often they need to be supervised as they cannot fulfill every task that is asked of them, and more complex or physical tasks may still need to be carried out by a person. They are also not always aware of the service context, especially if they are off-the-shelf commercial products, and as a result, they may not be able to deal with service-specific terminology. Local authorities also have to deal with a diversity of uses, cases, and use types, and the associated network of overlapping procedural rules. Programming an agent to handle the diversity of local authority work is a significant challenge, especially in an environment where the best functioning AI is typically focused on a specific task, and where the ability to access and modify the backend may not be possible because it is managed by a commercial vendor. Based on the experiences of local authorities pursuing data science projects, the report provides a few recommendations for concrete steps that local authorities can take to get data science projects off the ground. The most important is to make the case. Without this, there are no data science projects. Data science projects that can make the case do not need to be complicated and large scale. Starting with something small, even with a small data set, can generate management buy-in and begin to foster a culture of innovation, where concerns around risk and cost can be transformed into curiosity. This is best done with case studies, pilots, or proofs of concept, and an initial set of analyses with clearly visualized data to demonstrate tangible benefits. Small successes can be leveraged to justify larger projects, and pilot projects or proofs of concept can be scaled. This might be a good time during COVID-19 to take this opportunity to move projects that were or are successful now into larger scale projects that have broader reach. Making the case and generating some successes can also be used to place more emphasis on more foundational needs around information infrastructure development, which I think Man has already mentioned. And this includes establishing data governance structures that balance privacy and security with socially valuable outcomes, enabling the negotiation of integration across data silos, creating processes for data cleaning, model design, and model training, and ensuring that positive feedback loops are fostered between those who collect, process, and use the data. Successful data science projects will also need to engage with all relevant stakeholders to ensure that contextual expertise is incorporated into the design, whether the project is in-house or with a commercial partner. There are also opportunities through collaboration to address potential skills gaps, either in working with a local university, engaging in partnerships with public agencies, such as the Behavioral Insights team or What Works, or by developing shared service networks of data science staff that can work between local authorities. Finally, it's important to manage expectations around what can be achieved with data science projects. Management needs to understand the time it might take to put a project together, negotiate and approve data sharing agreements, engage with staff, clean data, train algorithms, and develop data visualization tools. These things need to be explicit and realistic. Another expectation that needs to be managed is that data science does not always save money. It can also identify places where more resources are needed. And in the end, it may be more about achieving long-term outcomes or increasing resident or client satisfaction than saving money. If you would like to explore some of these findings and recommendations in more detail, please read the Data Science for Local Government report. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them either during our panel discussion or over email after the fact. Thanks, that's my presentation.
That's great. Thank you, Thomas, for those insights and recommendations. I think a link to that has already been shared in the chat, which is great. So recommend having a look at that. And great. I see our first question has come in. That's great. You're saved from the chair's prerogative question. I'll go straight to Gary Todd, who asks, as a data-focused SME in the childcare market, we are well aligned to Redbridge's digital principles. How can an SME initiate a conversation with Redbridge to discuss collaboration, infrastructure, and new solutions in local gov? COVID-related innovations. So I guess that's one for you, Emeran.
Well, I think we just did, didn't we? So that's the start of the conversation. So you know, I think, yeah, absolutely. There's in our digital program at the moment, we have a backlog of a number of concepts, ideas, thinking that have come through from the various service areas. That is one that has sat there for some time, as you know. It's been a challenge for local government over the course of years. I remember 4 or 5 years ago, Hammersmith and Fulham doing some really great work in and around that space. So happy to pick up a conversation offline and bring in our SMEs into that conversation to move it forward.
That's great, thank you, Emeran. I know pre-COVID as well with techUK, we were having some conversations around some stuff as well. So who knows, hopefully when things quieten down we can pick up on some of that. Oh great, there's also now a question from Glenn from UK Cloud. One of the key challenges is taking data sources from multiple different organisations and turning that from data into usable, useful and used information. What challenges have you faced on that in Redbridge and how have you overcome that? So yeah, I'll pass it on to Emeran, and then Mayen, if you can also come in from any examples that you have seen as well during this period too.
I think COVID throughout that pandemic, it's been a, you know, the whole question about information governance has kind of been blown out, and we've started, you know, the freedom of using data sources to build different views and different insights, and has been really refreshing. And I think as a result of COVID, one of the conversations that we're starting to draw out internally is really how do we get better at that? How do we become far less risk averse in terms of thinking about data governance? I think there's an appetite now, and I think we've seen that because of our ability to move at pace. I suppose has been you know, one of the drivers that sat behind that is the freedom to use data in very different ways. I think there's always a challenge in drawing from various data sources. Those challenges are well versed across local governments in terms of data quality, and I think as May put up on one of her slides, the challenges you know have been expressed across local government. So I mean, there's as part of our digital approach, I think one of the key core themes really will be in the background is how do we really reinvent our infrastructure in a way that is going to really draw out data in a very different way. And that's not just, you know, about infrastructure, that's about culture as well, and about a whole different mindset in terms of how we utilize data. So I should just say, I wouldn't say we've overcome them. I think what we've done is really started the conversation using COVID as a platform for that.
Great, thank you. And I think that also answers the second part of Glenn's question. Mayen?
I was just going to say, Emeran's experience, we've also heard that from lots of local authorities. So a lot of like data analyst teams or heads of data have, you know, struggled for years to get access to internal data, and like with COVID, certainly they were inundated by requests of people sharing internal data sets, and also the special COVID-19 regulations to kind of allow for that data sharing to happen. We're starting like conversations to how to make sure that a lot of the stuff that had actually worked actually gets taken on to and made permanent. So, you know, we're certainly exploring how to kind of continue the kind of good data sharing side of things we've seen so far.
Great, thank you. And Thomas, I just wanted to bring you in, obviously with that thorough piece of research that you just shared, if there are any kind of points that you want to add or kind of recommendations.
Well, rather than focusing on the research, I'll go back to some of my experience as a policy wonk, which I worked in a provincial public service in Canada prior to starting my research at the University of Oxford. And one of the things was to take advantage of policy windows when they arise. And so COVID-19 may offer an opportunity to get these small, quick wins where you can demonstrate success and push those forward for other projects that are broader in scope.
That's great. And yeah, just to also draw everyone's attention to Sumya's point as well, around something similar too. Great. There's a question from Emeran from Tom Knight. Emeran, you mentioned a lot of analysis of frontline services. Do you have anything in place for monitoring the impact of COVID on things like social care activity?
Yeah, we do. We started the conversation back in the middle of May, really, beginning of May, really turning our thoughts towards, well, how do we monitor the impact of COVID going forward? And so thinking about a community impact, the development of a dashboard that would give us some form of insight into where those interventions could take place. And I think the range of data that we've seen come out as a result of COVID has allowed us to start to develop that dashboard that's going to provide us with that insight, certainly across adult social care, housing, our benefits, welfare teams, amongst a number of other areas where we're drawing data from. We've done a data audit in terms of there was so much in the way of data that was being thrown at us at the start of the pandemic. I think there were over 150 odd lines of data that were new to us, that were all of a sudden appearing out of crevices that we didn't know existed. And what we found is well, what of that data is really going to help us move us forward and really identify where in the community we can make those interventions. So one of our data scientists, Megan Tully, is really working to bring that together, and we've got it to a point where I would hope that over the course of the next few days, following our call this morning, that Megan will be showcasing that work to our senior leadership team to really drive that forward. So not just adult social care, but across the board in terms of welfare support and identifying those individuals across our communities that are, from a data perspective, that we can see that there is a possibility that these individuals will find themselves in particular situations that we, if we have the data and we know who these individuals are, that we can get ahead of the curve, so to speak, and put in place those interventions.
Great, thank you. And I guess as well, Redbridge are quite unique in that they have a dedicated data science team. I guess my question to our speakers is, how do you think the role of data insights or business intelligence teams will now change in this kind of new normal and evolving role of local authorities as they now kind of plan for recovery and look at actually what are the good digital things that we want to keep? So yeah, your views on how you see the role of data teams evolving in local government. Maybe start with you, Thomas.
Sorry, just had some trouble unmuting. I guess for business intelligence teams working in this COVID-19 environment, one of the big challenges will be making that shift away from tasks specifically related to COVID-19 and into tasks related to recovery from COVID-19, and the things that can be done now to start preparing for that through socio-demographic data analysis and reporting on things that are occurring within the borough or the local authority that might not be directly related to COVID, but that might be, I guess, externalities associated with the COVID-19 measures, with COVID-19 itself and with the move towards recovery. And so trying to get those types of projects off the ground now in order to get ahead of that, that type of shift from a move away from shielding and protection towards redeveloping the life of the community in the local authorities area.
Thank you for that, Thomas. And Mayan, if there's anything from you want to add?
Yeah, I think again, it's really shown how important digital and data is during COVID. And, you know, it's a lot of councils have had transformation that has taken years, literally done in weeks, and had to bring a lot of things forward. So we've seen such amazing pace in local governments as well as central government. And I think it kind of brings home that digital and data can't just be a team, something that another team does. It's got to be in the fabric of like all services and you know the culture of councils. But of course, that's very easy to say, very hard to do. So you know we're looking with like councils how to kind of bring that kind of deep transformation once you kind of exit like a command and control kind of crisis situation, so that becomes ingrained rather than, you know, that was just what happened during a crisis response. So yeah, again, with like our fund and continual work, we're trying to see how we can bring a lot of those changes and make them sustainable and part of the fabric of transformation rather than it just happened during COVID.
Great, no, thank you, May and Emeran.
I suppose just to echo both what Thomas and May in particular said there about you know the challenge around digital and data for a number of years has always been building momentum across your leadership teams to buy into to the concept, and where everyone loves a great visual and everyone loves a great story that comes off the back of data. Getting the culture right, I think if COVID has done anything, it's really accelerated, as May said, that's the whole thought process, the whole mindset shift in moving towards, you know, a data-driven mentality as an authority, and it really is proving key for everyone out there, all, you know, countless organisations, local government and beyond, that has seen that, and digital. You know, entwining the two, you can't separate the two at this point in time. One informs the other, and vice versa. And it's really, I think, the challenge for us, and I suppose local government going forward is how do you build enough capacity in the way to really drive that conversation forward. So, you know, collaboration absolutely is key to that. Developing those pathways, Thomas, as you pointed out in your deck, around developing, you know, those relationships with our higher education institutions and making sure that we're building pathways for both our own staff, but also those graduates that are seeking, you know, either internships or employment post graduation. So, you know, I think those are key. Those are things that we're looking at, and we're actively having conversations to try and develop. But it's, you know, I suppose the drive is where once upon a time we were spending a lot of time trying to change the mindset. The mindset's changed now, so the onus is now on us as digital teams to really move that forward and accelerate that. So that's the challenge that we all kind of face, and I suppose it comes back again to May's point around collaboration is going to be absolutely key, because we can't do all of the above by ourselves. It's really about working as a collective to meet our goals.
Definitely agree, and I think we've run out of time, but there was a question around collaboration and the new local challenge fund, May, and maybe if you're able to share anything with me after that, I can pass on or respond in the chat. Would that be okay? Sure. Great, but thank you to our speakers for their excellent remarks and points. We always talk about the importance of data and transformation, and how that can be used to ensure appropriate interventions. But I think the crisis has really put to the forefront how valuable that is, but also our teams and local government as well, how tirelessly they've been working in mitigating the impact of the crisis to communities through their great work. So thank you all as well for attending and sharing your comments and remarks. I'll be sharing the recording with everyone, and it'll be posted as well on the techUK website. Armin, is there anything else you wanted to add before we close?
Just thanks to everyone for, I know it's been a while since March, but we eventually got there in the end. So
Yes.
thanks everyone for listening and attending. Thank you.
Great, no. Thank you all, and hope to see you all again soon. Have a good day. Bye.